The next session is on trends in marketing. We've discussed why IT needs to have cloud, but there are certain trends in marketing and dealing with consumers that are imperative for us to consider if we want to get onto the cloud. We have Anupama Ahluwalia, who's working with Coca-Cola Company as a Vice President of Marketing India and Southwest Asia. She's worked also with Idea Cellular in marketing and in Colgate-Palmolive in marketing. So she's covered the hottest industry trends that are going on in FMCG, in soft drinks and Coca-Cola. I mean, that's the biggest name we have when we talk about marketing. And she's also been in the highly competitive environment of telecom. With no further delay, I would invite Ms. Anupama to take this forward from here.
सनशाइन वाली आशा रोने की वजह कम है हंसने के बहाने ज्यादा जिद है मुस्कुराएंगे खुश रहने का है वादा उम्मीद वाली धूप सनशाइन वाली आशा तुम जिससे अगर पूछोगे वो खुश रहना ही चाहे जब सच्ची मन से मांगो तो खुल जाती है
Good afternoon, everybody. It's always a pleasure to address the IT crowd. I can assure you that my understanding of the world in which you live, which is, and specifically today's topic about the cloud, is very basic. And I'm sure there's a lot that I can learn over the course of this conference. I'm also aware that I'm keeping you away from lunch, so I'm going to try to make it really short and snappy. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about the trends in marketing and how we are seeing a lot of convergence between the work that happens in the marketing space and the work that you do when it comes to the cloud. So that's really going to be the focus of my presentation. And I'm just going to start by talking a little bit about the world in which all of us live. I think as consumers and as professionals, we are constantly living in a world where we are seeing a lot of contrasts. We are experiencing it, we are also participating in it, and we are seeing changes that were never seen before, I would think even maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So truly a world of contrast awaits us outside this auditorium and outside our workspaces. And looking at the world in which we live, we are also seeing some changes when it comes to the consumer, who is also your end user. And this change really is to talk about it a little bit, is to show that the world in which we live, which is full of contrasts and changes, is also becoming increasingly participatory. So the culture in which we live is increasingly becoming participatory, and we seem to have, at some level, actually reduced those barriers that were between us, whether they were geographic barriers, or whether they were demographic barriers, or whether they were gender-related barriers. Culture is becoming increasingly participatory. And as a result of that, what we're really seeing is a new way of connecting with the consumer. Gone are the days when you could talk about groups that were only demographically profiled or psychographically profiled. Because thanks to technology, consumers are really moving into some kind of a seamless world. And as a marketer, one of my biggest challenges really is to address or to make our brands really relevant in areas where things are changing so fast. Consumers don't want to be told what to do anymore. And I think this is one of the most significant shifts that I'm observing in marketing, where consumers cannot be informed or cannot be told communication can no longer be a one-way process. In the good old days, when you wanted to build a brand, you could communicate about the benefits of the brand. You could talk about the functional benefits and the emotional benefits. And all that you had to do was come up with great advertising and try to build a brand connect. But we are seeing that that's becoming increasingly challenging in a world which is complex, which is participatory, where consumers are getting all kinds of information from various sources. So what the consumer is really saying is, don't tell me what to do. Take my views, take my opinions, and only if you're willing to engage in a conversation that we will listen and we will participate in your brands. So that's one big shift we are seeing as marketers. Another change that we are really seeing in marketing, because we talk a lot about consumer profiles, is the way consumers don't see themselves the way they are. So the youth want to become older, and the youth want to start behaving like mature adults. And on the other hand, you have the not so young wanting to look at a youthful mindset. So it's no longer about demographics. It's no longer about being defined by who I am, but about who I want to be. And that itself is posing huge challenges to us as marketers. So as a marketer of a brand which is 126 years old, one of my challenges is to look at brand values, and to look at brand values that are timeless and that will continue to last marketers on that particular job, and at the same time to build new values that are very contemporary and that resonate with today's mindset. So it's a little bit of both, and that's an area that increasingly successful marketers are looking into, to seeing how they can be relevant and at the same time contemporary as far as today's audiences are concerned. So it's all about being familiar, and it's also about being fresh. Consumers are seeking benefits that they are used to from brands, particularly from brands that have been existing for a fairly long time. And at the same time, the first thing the consumers ask us is, so what's new? And why should I be consuming this brand? And what is it that you're bringing new to the table? So it's a constant balance between familiar and fresh. And if I had to look at the marketing universe today, and I'm sure there are a lot of challenges from the world of the cloud, these are some of our challenges. Our challenges are essentially existing in a world where things are changing very fast. It's a very dynamic world. It's always on. Thanks to telecom and thanks to technology, you are working 24/7. You have access to data and information 24/7. And as a result of that, as marketers who need to build brands and who need to exist, because the brands are what really makes that specific business or the enterprise, it is about catching up with lost time. And it's always about making sure that your relevance increases and you don't become redundant. So the marketing universe today is extremely challenging. It's about constantly evolving. It's about always on. It's shifting. It's shifting all the time. And we are seeing one significant change in the way we market our brands, and that's about co-creation. So I think one of the big changes that we are seeing as a result of changes and dynamism and participatory culture is the fact that consumers are willing to participate in co-creation. And that's going to be a very exciting area for marketers and the telecom or the technology world to connect with. So I think that's a space that's going to change dramatically when it comes to co-creation of content. And therefore at Coke, we believe that the future of our brands and businesses is in exploring the power of the and. It's no longer about just making choices. Yes, we do need to make choices all the time, but it's about literally having your feet into boats and trying to manage that balance. It's about choice. So as a marketer, you're expected to provide choice to your consumers. And at the same time, the consumers are saying, simplify my life. Don't make it more complicated than what it already is. And therefore, the brands that can connect through a simplified message often succeed versus brands that are complex in their communication or that are complex in their benefits. It's about global. And all of us know everything that's happening at the same time, real time, across the world. And at the same time, it's about local. I'm sure you've heard this before, global and local. But it acquires new meaning in a world which is so interconnected, where global opportunities or global happenings impact local way of life. And I think that's going to be another challenge because consumers are also asking us to be relevant at both levels at the same time. It's about being relevant whenever and wherever. I come from an industry where our overall vision is to quench thirst, beverages, and therefore you cannot predict when you're going to feel thirsty. It's about being relevant in your portfolio of brands and beverages at home, or it could be a way when you're traveling or when you're on the go. So we have challenges in terms of packaging, in terms of pricing, in terms of benefits, where we are trying to communicate with the consumer 24/7 and say, how can we look at occasion-based marketing, where occasions determine the brand, determine the pack, determine the price point of consumption. So that's another area that we look at when we look at marketing trends. We want to be inspirational. Our messages need to have an emotional connect. So the advertising I just showed you in the beginning of my presentation was aimed at being inspirational. It was aimed at looking at the world from a positive lens. And at the same time, we also need to be operational. Our packs need to sell, and our packs need to be distributed and need to be available in the 1 million outlets that are across the country. And therefore, they also need to have a very strong operational leg to it. The packs that you see on the right-hand side have tremendous potential when we look at the cloud. Because today, the pack can be dynamic. Any brand's pack is the real asset that the brand owners have, and they can leverage the pack to connect with their consumers through real-time messaging, through real-time consumer promotions, through a real-time connect. So I personally would be very interested in looking at innovation where the pack becomes a new way of connecting with the consumer. Therefore, as a marketer, it's really about building this fine balance between brand love. So it's about consistently wooing your consumers, and at the same time, looking at brand value. So our valuations on brands are based on what the worth is. And that is obviously based on our market shares, on the basis of how much we sell. And that really has to be a good balance between inspirational, operational, brand love, and brand value. And then there are some things which we believe don't change, irrespective of the changing times. This is the Coca-Cola logo, which is 126 years old. And this is the Coca-Cola logo today. So the challenge, again, is to connect with changing consumers and needs and retaining some core values as a marketer, because it's essential to retain what works. So one of the key trends that we believe helps the Coke company to understand and keep pace with these changing dynamics is to open up the brand ecosystem. There was a time when we had one-way communication, and as marketeers, we decided what to communicate. I think that those days are over. And what really happens is that we start including consumers on brand ownership. It's now about really saying, we don't own the brand as marketeers or as the company, but the consumers do. And the more we involve our consumers, who are the end users of that product or service, the more we see a positive lift in our brand love or brand affinity for that specific brand. Our approach at Coke is to really look at this entire engagement platform or the opportunities to engage in a liquid and linked manner. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mean by the liquid and linked engagement approach for us. We talked about the fact that we co-create, we involve our consumers, and we do that through a new way of looking at consumer engagement. So in the 80s and the 90s, you had one channel like Doordarshan, for example. You had one great program like Hum Log. And as a marketer, all that I would have done is made sure that my ad was placed on Hum Log prime time. Today, that's not good enough. Today, there is increasing fragmentation of media. And because of the fragmentation of media, looking at the digital world and the social media world, and looking at mass media opportunities like television or print or radio, what we're really seeing is that A, the media is getting fragmented, and B, consumers are connecting across mediums and groups. So we are seeing a lot of micro communities getting formed, and those communities could be across geographies, they could be across socioeconomic groups, they could be brought together for various reasons that cannot be possibly explained, but they are a clique, they are a group. And our challenge as a marketeer is to connect with those groups because they have opinions, and those opinions matter to us as custodians of the brand. So changing engagement paradigms also means changing the way we connect with the audiences. And therefore, we are really looking at a new way of connecting with our consumers. We truly believe that stories are the new currency. There was a time when a brand had a specific message, a differentiating proposition, and that differentiating proposition was communicated. Today, that differentiating proposition needs to be relatable, and it needs to be carried forward. And therefore, stories, and all of us have been born and brought up with stories, whether it's fables, or whether it's religion, or whether it's entertainment. We truly understand the value of a story, and that is a new currency because that helps us connect across diverse groups of consumers. So essentially, the new way of marketing is to look at stories of relevance, and by that I mean content, I mean experiences, and I mean conversations. A story that can build conversation with your target group spreads faster, and it creates value for your brand. And that really is the change, because otherwise no one's going to be talking about your brand. People are too busy and too occupied with their lives to be having brand-led conversations. But that really is the change that we are seeing from the Coke perspective, where stories that spread and add value to the brand is a new way, is our cloud computing, if you may say that. So brand messages play out as stories, and we try to bring together our entire ecosystem, which is consumers, shoppers, because in some cases the shopper is not the consumer, constituents. This could be NGOs, this could be media, this could be our stakeholders, our internal stakeholders. In our case, it's the bottling operations, because they are the people, they are the feet on street, and they actually sell our products, and the customers, like key accounts. So we try to work through the entire ecosystem with key brand messages, and that's how we connect our internal stakeholders and our external stakeholders as well. So essentially, we have a great opportunity to look at content. And today, content is the next big currency for us as marketers. Content which can scale up, which can spread in real time. That essentially is one critical way of connecting through the cloud, where as brand marketers, we look at great content which can spread in real time. And we would like to enable that because the fact is that it's going to spread with or without us, right? So the transition is from impressions. These were the standard terminologies used to measure a media plan not so long ago. We started talking about expressions. It's not about downloading the message, it's about how the consumer takes that particular message and expresses it going forward. And how does that lead to a conversation? So expressions are also not good enough. It's about building a conversation going forward. And that's where communities play a critical role. And that eventually leads to transaction building in our case, where that really is the final destination from a brand value perspective that I spoke about earlier. So really 6 key messages in terms of the trends of marketing. We want to connect with focused messaging, and we believe that this messaging needs to be in real time. It needs to spread well. And there I think there's a lot of opportunity for the IT world to connect with the marketing world and see how this can be enabled. We definitely want to leverage technology, and I'm sure you know more about that than I do, because technology is changing the way we live across rural India, across urban India, across various consumer profiles. And therefore, our connect with the technology-enabled consumer is a challenge that we would all want to become a part of. We do want to engage with youth. We are a young country, and the youth definitely define the way we are. Youth is definitely a mindset, and therefore it also means looking at different profiles and finding the right ways to connect with youth. We need to keep anticipating changing needs, and this is a part of the ongoing marketing plans and conversations that we have. Embracing local values. It's very important for us to retain what we believe is truly right, and that becomes an important part of looking at our marketing plans. And this is a new one, which is participating in the community. I have not seen as much of participating in the community in the brands that were the strong brands maybe 10 or 15 years ago, as much as we are seeing it today, because participating in the community becomes vital for a brand. Sustainability is going to be a very large part of the marketing agenda going forward. And as we realize our responsibility as marketeers towards the communities that we live in or the communities that we work with, I see this to be a game changer in the years to come. I think some baby steps are being taken towards participation in the community by a few brands in India, but I'm sure there's a lot that can be done. And I think this is going to be one big change going forward for all of us. So that really was what I wanted to share this afternoon. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have any. So thank you very much.
Do we have any questions? Just 1 minute.
Thank you. My name is Prabhat Mohanty. I have 2 questions, rather. First, one refers to your slide where you told us that consumers tell us that don't teach us or don't tell us what to do. It refers to that. How did Apple Jobs thought like consumers don't know what they want? And he built a brand. He built products, a series of products around that philosophy in this volatile economic situation, and became so successful. That's part 1. And part 2 is that if you were to advise cloud computing companies or who are trying to scale, you must have heard people saying that, okay, there is still hesitation about accepting cloud as a service in IT companies. If you were to advise a cloud company how to sell to these companies, what will be your advice? What is the line of approach that you would take? Because to me, I think they have not built credibility, in a sense, to be acceptable on real-time basis. So they're still struggling about building a credibility. Now, in this scenario, if you were to advise them, what will you do? Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think there's some great questions out there. To the first question about the consumer saying, don't tell me what to do, and to your correlation to Steve Jobs, I really wish I'd asked Steve Jobs this question, but the way I would see it is, I think he tapped into a wonderful insight, and that was also through a lot of consumer connect. And yes, we know that there wasn't a lot of conventional consumer research that the Apple company undertakes, but at the end of the day, it is about getting a very strong insight about what the consumer wants. And in this particular case, the consumer was in many ways saying, delight me, surprise me. And I may not know exactly what I need, but delight me. And I think that's probably what the entire Apple vision is, to constantly delight consumers with new ways and new ways of looking at easing up technology. So in my view, when I say that consumers are saying it can't be a one-way communication. I think the days of one-way communication are over. It is about building a conversation. And that's where the consumer starts getting engaged and starts getting involved in the products and services that he or she is interested in. To the second question, I think there is a lot that can be done when it comes to building a common ground for IT and marketing professionals to come together. Last week, I was in a digital and social media workshop in my company, and this workshop was being run by IT professionals. And we were trying to understand this world of digital and social media, because while the marketers are the end users of these services, the challenge is also to understand what the complexities are when it comes to the cloud. So maybe developing a more user-friendly interface to connect with the end user could be one way of bridging the gap and understanding what is it that the end user really desires and seeks, and leaving the complexity to be sorted out. So I would think that very often our conversations break down because we don't understand each other's complex areas of work. But one way of doing that is to really see what the end user wants and how the world of cloud can actually address some of those needs.
Right, we have another question here.
Hi, I come from a world which is diametrically opposite to yours. I'm from the development sector, and I'm delighted to know you see participation by brands in communities as a game changer. I just want to know how you plan to do it.
That's a great question. I'm going to give the example of an initiative that we have undertaken at the Coca-Cola company. And while this is just one small initiative, but we have, for example, built up started connecting with the initiative of educating the girl child. And we have tied up on a program which is called Support My School with NDTV, where the entire initiative is to bring together multiple partners. So it's not just Coke and NDTV, but it's an ecosystem, including UN Habitat, that actually comes together to empower or to develop basic facilities of sanitation that allow the girl child to go to school. And this is just an example of participating in the community, where this year, in fact, last month, we committed to building 272 schools, where various partners, including our own internal stakeholders as well as stakeholders from the industry, they all came together to participate and contribute towards the community for this cause of educating the girl child. So these are some examples. I think basis your product or basis your service, engaging with the community is going to keep developing or keep taking various forms. And we have chosen this as an initiative, but I'm sure there are a lot of companies and brands out there who are doing different things to connect and engage at the grassroots level. Yes, there is a process. There is a way of identifying various opportunities of connecting on community engagement, and that is on the basis of where we believe our consumer is. Yeah?
Thank you.
Excuse me. Excuse me, I'd like...
Yes, please.
Is there any neat way for a company to figure out a focused message for the customer? I mean, you mentioned that a focused message is what is required, and I'm a marketeer too. I'm having a tough time figuring out a focused message. So does Coca-Cola have something to share on how to have a focused message?
Well, I think it is always possible to come up with a focused message, but at the same time, you have to also let go and allow the consumers and the stakeholders to actually work with that message. So the fact, and I can give an example of Coke, where the focused message is optimism. And we want to build, and the brand believes in optimism, and therefore that becomes a part of the focused message. However, what we do is we include consumers in building and developing these messages and the conversations. And that's where I think participatory way of working with the consumers can make a big difference. Yes, there will be different interpretations of that focused messaging. And I think that's the one big change we are observing, where you can no longer control the message. But you can steer it, you can guide it, you can find a way to ensure that the right communication goes through. But at the same time, you have to also accept that the same message may be received differently by different consumers.
Good.
Business development and marketing. A very mundane question. A lot of spiritual gurus and various other persons have been, spreading a lot of news about your product. How you have been able to handle it and no impact on your sales? Question is obvious, but how you have handled it? They have tried their best to downgrade your product, public not to use it, but how it has been that you have been still managing the same volumes and no impact on the society?
Well, I think it's about doing things right and ensuring that the fundamentals are right, irrespective of the kind of feedback that one is seeing in various forms in the system. And I showed a slide about the Coca-Cola logo then and the Coca-Cola logo now. And there are some values that all brands need to hold on to, irrespective of the onslaught or irrespective of negative criticism that may come your way. And that can happen to any category, any brand, any product or service. And I think the challenge really is to stay true to what you fundamentally believe in as a marketing company, and ensuring that you deliver and you don't really sway from that path.
I've got one question. You've got a fairly diversified product portfolio. So as a related question, there are intergenerational transfer of values that actually happen. For your different products, are you actually communicating differently with different generations? Or are you actually saying that the message remains the same, but the channel that we are actually using to get across to the different generations is changing?
No, that's a great question, and that's one of our big challenges, because we have a portfolio of brands, and all our brands are equally important, and therefore the challenge is always to make sure that we provide the right ecosystem for all our brands. I think the core in what we do really is ensure that the product proposition, because each product is differentiated and the message is differentiated. So the brand dynamics change from each brand. And while we have a portfolio, each brand or each category in the portfolio has a role to play. And therefore we make sure that that specific brand gets its fair share in terms of the message, in terms of product differentiation, and in terms of the connect. We have examples of brands that connect across geographies, across target groups, across age segments. So as I was mentioning earlier, it's not just the age, but it's about what your proposition is on the brand. And that starts connecting to a different group of consumers. We also have brands that are consumed by the same audiences. So you could have situations where 2 or 3 brands are consumed by the same target group. But the reason for consumption is different. And one of the challenges that we have in marketing is to make sure that those reasons are addressed in the marketing plans.
Hi, Anupama. Hi there.
Sorry, I can't.
Hi.
Hi, yes.
Hi, I'm Rudrakshi. I come from technical consultancy, and we've spoken twice about the Coca-Cola logo. And I understand it has not undergone visible changes. However, the white wave underneath has gone changes many a times. But what you call is perhaps the retention of the brand or perhaps the retention of the logo, I see as a reluctance of change. Because I sell my services to the clients, and the biggest obstacle I face is reluctance to change among them as well. So perhaps they have the principle to keep or perhaps retain the current services that they are in. But how do I convince them about the changes that can be offered? So even if I take the logo as a change, has it not been offered? Perhaps a change has not been offered to you, or perhaps the acceptance of change has not been there.
Could you repeat your question? I'm sorry, I haven't understood the question.
Well, I say, let me put it in other words, you say the Coca-Cola logo has retained itself for 125 years as of now. There has been minor changes, but the cursive Coca-Cola still remains. So what I wish to say is, if I were to offer you a new logo or perhaps a new technology, how would the acceptance be done?
Okay, I get that, yeah. Well, you would have to definitely convince us that that logo is better than the Coca-Cola logo. And it builds
I've not found one in 125 years.
And it needs to last by 125, but multiples of 125 years. But having said that, I think it's about retaining values that have worked. So it's about building that strong balance between what is contemporary and what is here and now, and what is everlasting. And that was an example just to show how some things are everlasting, and therefore we don't believe in changing for the sake of change. Can a logo be written better than what it is right now? Of course. But the question is, does that embody the same values that you are seeing in that current equity? That is a question. And therefore, it's about building a certain everlasting view to your business. And that logo is just an example. The idea was to really say that some things don't change, irrespective of the change around you. And as a marketer, the challenge really is to hold on to what you believe will continue forever. So it's really building a fine balance between changing with changing times, and at the same time holding on to the fundamentals. And that truly is a challenge. I don't think there are any clear tick-marked right and wrong answers there. So you have to kind of find your way through. And you do make mistakes as you go along. And at the same time, you kind of come back to the basics and say, yes, this is what I want to hold on to, and this is what I'm going to change in the marketing mix.
Hi, my name is Arif. I am an HR professional as well as involved in the NGOs. My question refers to your emphasis on conversation. Now the question is that when you are talking of conversation, and incidentally I have seen your campaign as far as the girl child is concerned, and I think it is a very intelligently designed campaign. But the question is, when you are conversing, you are trying to get some benefit for the brand. Is that conversation aimed at the beneficiaries of that campaign, or is it aimed at the other people who are going to hear about the campaign using the media like NDTV, which you have chosen to partner with them?
I think it does both. The primary objective is to connect on your brand. So I would differentiate brand conversations from CSR advertising. And I think there, the brand conversation is to build brand love, is to build brand affinity. So there is a very clear intent that the brand or the marketer has for those initiatives. At the same time, those conversations are not necessarily only linked to the brand, because they get into spin-offs. So for example, if the conversation is about the girl child and how it can benefit, it can have a spin-off, and that's where you're not really managing or controlling. Then that is true conversation taking place, which is over and beyond the limit of the brand. In this particular example, the brand gave the message, and then steps back and sees how the conversation is panning out in social media or in brick and mortar space as well.
Anupama? Yeah,
sorry,
Shashank
yes.
Dinga this side. Actually, this is regarding marketing trend, coming on to marketing trends. So, actually, if we see that in beverage industries, if you consider 4 or 5 top brands or like that, so if I say everybody is getting its, you can say almost share in that market. So, coming on to trend, how you create a value add in your marketing trends, or to get into, not just into retaining a brand to a certain level, like Coca-Cola is coming from last 100 years, so it's going to in a similar trend, if I say, or then you can say top brands or like that. So how you value add this, or through marketing, so rather than retaining a brand value, how to increase, how to move further like that?
Yeah, I think the challenge is always to increase the brand value, and we look at the 3 A's. We look at affordability, we look at accessibility, and we always find a way to increase our distribution. So it is always about affordability, accessibility, and finding a way of building brand affinity for our brands. And the intent in this particular, in any case, for brands is to build on brand value, to build on brand worth. In a country like India, there are huge challenges. It's about building that affordability and accessibility, which really helps us build the brand worth. And that, I think, is a continuous journey. It goes even beyond an annual business plan conversation.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, Anupama. I'm Madhu from Sonata Software. I'm in the marketing.
Hi.
I just had one question about the challenges that you have expressed in your presentation. First of all, excellent presentation.
Thank you.
In that presentation, I saw several challenges for which there are currently IT solutions that have been developed. So are you using any of the solutions for probably sentiment analysis or analytics or social media or anything? And how easy have you found the current generation of tools that you have been using?
Yes, I think that's a good question.
I just want to add to that question before you answer it. I'm taking liberty of my position. It's being touted that the CMO is going to spend a lot more on IT than the CIO. There are people who agree, there are people who disagree. And in context to his question, I just also want to ask that, are you making any IT purchases, which otherwise, before cloud came on board, would have gone through the IT department? If you can combine your answer with both these questions.
Yes, we are using various IT solutions, and I think the challenge really is to look at the pack. As I mentioned, in our case, the pack is our most critical asset on the brand, and to connect it with what's happening in terms of conversations. So there is something happening out there in social media, whether it's Facebook or whether it's Twitter or whether it's blogs or whether it's consumers connecting through telecom, through SMSs, through emails, all forms of communication that are happening, and we ourselves are enabling that as marketeers through content. One example of content that I can share on Coke is Coke Studio. So Coke Studio is music-enabled content where unique music as content works on social media, and we start connecting with our consumers. Now, we are using IT solutions, but I think the challenge for us is to find that ideal mix where we can get a connect with transaction, where the consumer is purchasing or picking up a bottle of Coke, and the content. So that, to me, is the dream IT solution, where we are, as marketeers, we are able to connect on our packaging, on our bottles, on our packs, along with the content that the brand message wants to play out. To my mind, I don't think we have that. We are using some solutions like QR codes and some amount of database management, but surely there is a lot of opportunity for cloud computing to see if you can actually help the industries, like in marketing-related products and categories, to actually build that connect where it's a new ecosystem. So that is something that I personally would be very, very keen to evaluate for the future.
Thank you very much, Anupama, and thank you for letting us know what kind of IT solution we're going to buy. You're going to get a lot of calls in front of these people now. And from our side, here's a small token of appreciation for your time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to have you.